Hello. The event that has taken place over the past 2 days absolutely demands commentary, so I have to say a few words. Well, first of all, we categorically reject the logic of Putin gave everything away, for the simple reason that just the reaction to the announcement of a meeting between Putin and Trump in Alaska sparked such a wave of opposition from all sides that there is no doubt everyone is terribly afraid of this meeting. A few words need to be said about the location. Well, first of all, Alaska is connected to both Russia and the United States of America. And in this sense, it is not a visit from a junior to a senior partner, especially since it has already been announced that the next meeting will take place on Russian territory. But there are two circumstances. The first circumstance is security. I think the meeting will take place in a location that will be extremely difficult to access. However, we will see about that. And the second is the absence of intermediaries. The number of people wanting to influence this meeting is so great that its low location in this sense is very telling. Now, moving on. It is absolutely clear that the meeting took place at the initiative of the United States of America. And we shouldn't think that this is because Trump really wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. The issue lies elsewhere. I've already mentioned that there are two significant questions that absolutely require very serious and extensive discussion. The first, of course, is the complex situation in the Middle East. The second, equally important, involves Russia and China, which demand careful consideration. I'm not going to get into various kinds of political science discussions right now. But it's absolutely clear that a whole bunch of different participants, primarily the United Kingdom, will not have the opportunity to obtain information about this conversation. And I strongly suspect that it will take place under such conditions that no one will be able to get close. By the way, if it were to take place in Arab countries, in other words, effectively on British territory, there would be a very high probability that, at the very least, the British would have a recording of this conversation. That won't happen in Alaska. So why exactly are they so incredibly afraid? The undeniable thing is, Vladimir Putin is, in a certain and very significant sense, considerably freer in his actions and decisions than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is currently in an extremely difficult and challenging situation because he is being held in check from all conceivable and various sides, facing immense pressure from every direction. And even just receiving objective and unbiased information from Putin is an extremely important and crucial element for him, not to mention everything else that might be involved. What Trump will actually be able to influence and exert his power over is a complicated and multifaceted question. Because, well, we understand that his capabilities and his overall influence are very limited and constrained in this particular situation. For this reason, Putin decided to meet Trump halfway. What will he get in return? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. I am far from truly believing that I am the absolute best negotiator in the world, or that I genuinely understand the current complex situation better than President Putin himself does. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the results. Moreover, the results will include both the obvious ones that will be announced and the less obvious ones that we will see later on. Moving on. There's a lot of discussion about the so-called peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There are also rumors that the US has taken control of Armenia's nuclear industry, and so on and so forth. So let's put it simply. This entire expansive region is meticulously set up in such a profound way that enduring peace and widespread prosperity are only truly possible if a powerful empire is solely responsible for their establishment and continued maintenance. Consequently, there can realistically be a maximum of 3 distinct empires operating within this particular region. It's either the Persian Empire or the Ottoman Empire in one form or another, or the Russian Empire. The Ottoman Empire, thanks to the efforts of its current Sultan, is in an extremely difficult situation. Let me be honest, I'll just say it as it is. I have no confidence at all that Turkey will exist in its current form 5 years from now. Again, that doesn't mean it will definitely fall apart. It means there is a possibility, because economically the situation there is utterly hopeless. And expanding this very empire to such a state that it would have internal markets capable of guaranteeing its stability is completely impossible for a simple reason. It requires money, which Turkey does not have, and under any circumstances will not have. In other words, they can create chaos in the countries they include in the concept of Greater Turan, but to actually unite them under an imperial rule is something they cannot do for now, and perhaps never will, at least not in the current reality. It's impossible. The Persian Empire is also in a complicated situation. Moreover, it has places that are much more suitable and important for it. That includes the Persian Gulf Coast and everything else. Why would they even try to move north? It's simply impossible. In other words, the modern state of Iran is simply not capable of achieving such significant feats. And so, what is currently happening there today is, from the comprehensive perspective of the entire region, undoubtedly the prelude to a major and extensive war, but importantly, not between the established countries themselves. Rather, it will be a conflict primarily between various individual groups. Therefore, it will essentially be like a kind of Gulyai pole, reminiscent of the Ukrainian style of 1918 to 1919, and absolutely nothing else can realistically happen there. As a result, a Kurdish state might emerge, though not on Armenian territory, but they could seize a piece of Nakhichevan. And a piece of Turkey, of course, or something else as well. I won't discuss this simply because the probabilities of different scenarios there are so high that it's absolutely impossible to analyze anything adequately. Britain tried to take charge in this region and put a lot of effort into it. And we can see how well that turned out for them, both in the story with Pashinyan and in the story with Olive. But what the United States did clearly shows that Britain's actual control is very weak. And if it is inherently weak, that truly means the significant likelihood of widespread chaos there is extremely, extremely high. I genuinely do not see who could possibly stop it. Russia will not be going there anytime soon, not in the foreseeable future, simply because it has no interest at all in dealing with all this mess. That's the picture. So some people think, now going back to the meeting between Putin and Trump, some say that since Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize, he'll twist Putin's arm to make him agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine and within certain agreements. Here's a fundamentally important point. Since the Zelensky regime is indeed controlled from London, the undeniable fact that Donald Trump strategically moved the planned meeting out from under any potential British oversight clearly shows that he has absolutely no intention of following the predetermined lead of that particular regime. What they will do about that regime is a separate question. Let me remind you that Zelensky has already declared that there will be no trading of territories and that he will continue the war until a victorious end. What Trump will do about this is his own business. There are many different speculations on this topic. For example, that he simply wants to leave and throw everything onto the European Union. But the general logic is absolutely straightforward. No agreements are possible with the current regime. And changing the regime means completely dismantling the existing model of governance in Ukraine as a state. At present, there is no alternative model. There is no doubt that both Trump and Putin, well, Trump, let's say, may have some hypothetical constructs. Putin definitely has concrete plans, but they can certainly discuss those matters somewhere, perhaps in a place like Alaska. No one else can discuss this today. They simply won't be allowed to. And Trump has already shown that while he may not be able to impose his will on everyone, he can easily dismantle the hypothetical constructs built by countries like the UK, Turkey, and so on, as demonstrated by the situation with Armenia and Azerbaijan. And taking into account the potential agreement in Beijing, it is now fundamentally important for Trump to build at least some kind of system, even if only around the United States, that will be able to govern. For this reason, we are eagerly awaiting this remarkable meeting, but at the same time, we must profoundly understand that today, no single entity or nation is actually truly capable of effectively governing these vast and complex territories. This includes, but is not limited to, regions such as Ukraine, the Middle East, and the South Caucasus, as well as many other geographically diverse and politically sensitive regions across the globe. And for this crucial reason, without the establishment and diligent maintenance of stable and robust international coalitions, nothing genuinely good or beneficial will ultimately come of it. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.